Hello and welcome to another episode of The Real Deal with me, Josh, and as ever, my co-host, my friend, my companion, and dare I say, some kind of Starcraft lover, Charles.
Oh, yeah, that's me. It's Charles.
I think I said Starcraft lover.
Yeah, is it Starbucks or Star something else?
I believe the Shakespearean quote is Star Fox lover.
Oh, I thought you were doing the what's her name quote.
Jewel?
No, who's that lady everyone likes?
Sheryl Crow.
Joe loves. Yeah, no. I forget.
Hello?
No, not her.
Not Adele?
I can't believe it. I can't remember her name. She's like the most famous lady in the world.
The Queen?
No. Not the Queen. She wrote some songs. Oh, I'd have to ask Joe.
Could it be
Taylor Swift.
Peggy Noonan?
Taylor Swift.
Oh, T-Swift.
Yeah, T.
I don't care for her.
No, she wrote a song about. I can't remember. I always sounded like Starbucks lovers, and I didn't know if that was just like a cheeky remark about Shakespeare or if I just misheard it.
Or she just loves Star Fox and misspoke about that.
Wait, did you think I said Star Fox, like the Nintendo game?
Yeah, for a minute I thought we were going that route of like my Star Fox lover, which is like to say we both share a love of the wonderful game Star Fox.
I was playing Super Smash Brothers. Is he in Super Smash Brothers? No,
I guess
not.
he isn't. He is in Super Smash Brothers.
He is?
I am certain of it.
Okay, so that's what I thought. Yeah, we were playing.
He's the fox with the laser gun.
Yeah. I'm a Captain Falcon sort of player.
Me too, in that I hate the game, but I figured out how to do that one Falcon Punch thing, and everyone likes it.
Exactly. If you hate the game and you can hit like over B a lot, then it's not so bad because you can just punch all the time.
It is the least enjoyable group activity outside of prayer that I've ever experienced.
I played with Joe and one of her friends both of them had never played it before. And then my good
Joe, your beautiful girlfriend, Joe.
Yes.
The listeners at home don't know Joe. We can't make assumptions about this.
And her friend beat us all. She'd never played before, and she kicked our asses. So that's just attests to the, beauty of the game, the nuanced strategy. It's a great game.
Yeah, it speaks to the subtlety of a game called Super Smash Brothers.
Bros. Super Smash Bros.
Whatever.
Oh, how have you been, Josh?
Oh, Charles, it's been one of those weeks. I have an ache in my foot, but a song in my heart.
There you go.
This week we watched two movies. One, an unequivocal masterpiece, the product of vision, hard work, cohesive and coherent narrative, and deeply stirring dialogue. And the other, Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
That's right. What was the other one we watched?
Oh, a little old film called Screamers.
Screamers. Oh, that's right. Did you watch the trailer?
The trailer for Screamers?
Yeah.
No, I didn't watch the trailer for Screamers.
Oh, if I get my act together, I'll edit some of this in so it'll be like we're talking about it and suddenly we'll start listening. It'll just start going right into it. But it was back in the what year is this? 95 or something?
95.
Love it. It was back in the trailers when it was all like the dude talking and it.
A world overlooked and long forgotten by those who settled it.
The tagline was really long. I forget what it was. It was like. It was like, and once. There are these things, and they're robots, and then there'll be other robots, and then they'll look like people, and then you'll only know them apart by the way they scream.
Things ain't what they used to be.
It was really good.
IMDb lists two equally excellent taglines. The silence of space is about to be shattered. They're like, go hard on the assonance on that one. Everyone likes assonance. And the other one is, the last scream you hear will be your own.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that one.
All a lot of big talk for what is maybe the least frightening film I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's, we'll get into it for sure, because It follows, or maybe I guess it starts, or it's near the beginning of a long line of shitty Philip K. Dick adaptations.
Yeah, this one being perhaps one of the most disappointing given how much I care for the source material. Like Paycheck, the John Woo adaptation, is a pretty shit movie. It's really bulldozes all the subtlety and moral nuance of PKD's work into a trash pile with the one and only Ben Affleck in it.
I was going to ask you, which is your least favorite Philip K. Dick, and what's your most favorite?
Well, that's a great question. I think that when you're working with Philip K. Dick, who was an author who was overly preoccupied with moralism more than anything else, he was deeply influenced by religious text and Gnosticism and these really big questions of what is life? How do we live it? What is reality? How do we treat people? How can we love other people? How can we know ourselves? So he dealt with these very big questions in a very pulpy, sci-fi manner. So to see most of these movies is to see those ideas really just get, paved over into the kind of pablum that makes it a sort of mainstream science fiction picture. I would say the biggest failure, well, in a way, the source material for Screamers is an excellent short story called Second Variety that I highly recommend. That is really astonishingly bleak. And for all of the pulled punches in the film Screamers, he really lets you have it in Second Variety. It's a really, really bleak vision of not just capitalism and global war run amok, but of, what is the value of human life? If machines can replicate themselves, how are they any different than we are? And this movie really completely fucks that up in a way that's pretty dramatic.
Yeah,
but
I made some notes about that because I actually reread the story because I remember loving it when I was a kid, but I hadn't read it probably since I was in high school. So I read it again, and there are certainly some similarities, but the ways that it moves from the story is just, it's unbelievable that they chose that. It's first to get Steven Spielberg, right?
For what?
Who did Minority Report? Like, why would you take again and again? We see Philip Dick. His like masterpieces are all very subtly dark and just end up making life seem unlivable. And then they choose people like Steven Spielberg, who is a notorious just like saccharine hack. And then just all the times that they could go and make the story, back to make the movie look like it was in the story, they just make it a happy ending. It's such a strange, like, we'll take this guy who is perverse and dark and really tapping into some emotional stuff about living, and we'll just gloss it over. Very strange. And again, definitely at the end.
I'm happy you brought up Minority Report because talk about a fuck up of a film. I mean,
oh, Jesus.
Again, before we even get to the lack of creativity in imagining that story, the product placement in that movie is so overwhelming that even as a kid, I can recall distinctly the Aquafina and Gap commercials within that movie.
I think that would be, if someone said Minority Report, the Gap would be the first thing that came to mind. I would agree.
It's nuts, though.
Yeah.
That would be his nightmare. That would be PKD's waking nightmare would be, intertextual advertising in a movie about one of his books. He would fucking hate that.
Yeah, so that's why asking the question, which is your least favorite Philip Dick adaptation, is really hard because there are so many of them to choose from.
Yeah, well, I think my favorite's pretty easy. I want to give Richard Linklater a lot of credit for actually managing to capture the paranoid tension of A Scanner Darkly and doing it very richly.
That's the reason why we love each other, Josh, is that too is my absolute favorite.
Well, also, we had sex that one time.
Well, that's why. Wasn't it after we watched it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, his books are legendary for their woozy, delirious narratives that weave in and out of reality and fantasy and addiction and depression and manic states and, alien abduction. And so I think far more, I don't think Ridley Scott was trying to achieve the perfect Philip K. Dick adaptation, kind of much the opposite. He was trying to make a great Ridley Scott movie with Blade Runner. And it's a very good movie. It's not my favorite Philip K. Dick adaptation.
No. Scanner Darkly is about as perfect as you can get.
Yeah, and the rotoscoping is probably the cleverest way to achieve what, you really can't on camera. So, I don't know. I was very impressed with that. I like watching that movie. I think it's perfectly cast. I think the folding, the narrative folding that Linklater performed on the book was very subtle and worked to benefit the movie. So that's the best adaptation. We both agree. Charles, look at us now.
Ding. Oh, I did record. I have that bell sound that you made from last time, so I'll pop that in.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever time that was.
Yeah, no, it's a good sound.
Yeah, it was actually really good. I listened to it over and over again while I was at work. It sounded really good. It was pleasant.
Sometimes when it's, dark out, I'll lie in bed and just listen to episodes of the show over and over again and repeat and laugh and laugh and laugh.
But Total Recall, I think, is, even though Blade Runner is like really good, I think I'm gonna have to go with Total Recall as my second favorite.
And Charles, once again, you'll find no argument here. That is one of my favorite movies, and I think they've more than adequately handle the complexity of the narrative. And it sounds funny to say that about a Schwarzenegger film directed by the world's least subtle director, Paul Verhoeven, and that's not a criticism. He's just not good at being subtle. That's a really well done movie, and if you look around the seams of the piece, you really see exactly how nuanced the question of what is real is in Total Recall. It's an underrated movie.
Very much so. And even you say he's not super subtle, but the fact that Starship Troopers somehow baffled the entire movie-going audience in 1997 about whether he was, embracing fascism or making it into a satire is like, I don't know how people missed that. It is one of the least subtle movies I've seen that sort of just goes after and attacks the idea of fascism. And then a lot of the critics at the time were thinking that it was like the book and sort of an interesting pro-dialogue about fascism.
Well, I think that, that deserves an episode in and of itself, because how ballsy is it to take a source text and very deliberately make the opposite of that book? Heinlein's novel is unapologetically pro-war, unapologetically nativist, and unapologetic in expression of the value of a rigid caste system and of a, autocratic rule. And, Verhoeven punches holes in that with so gleefully that I'm astonished that the estate of Heinlein didn't have some sort of issue with it.
That's probably why I think it was so, as you said, gleeful. It's a good word for it. It's just like, I'm sure everyone who thought it was, just like the book, was just caught up in it and didn't think twice about what he was doing, which is a sad state, which is why so many people get so pissed off about satire. They don't even stop to think about what it's trying to do. But yeah, Verhoeven, Total Recall, when I was in college, my roommate and I, we just sat down. It was like 2 a.m. We decided to watch Total Recall, and I remember falling asleep to it, and it was one of the most lovely moments of my life.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, because you can get in there, and it does do pretty well with the Philip Dick sort of realist, sort of fucking around with what reality is. But you can also just take it as an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and just enjoy it. So it hits on so many levels.
Yeah, it's an excellent film. It has a great fade to white at the end too, which I don't think gets enough credit. I love that. It's the best touch to the whole film. It's the little parting sprinkle of that movie magic, where you ask the question, is this all the fevered dream of a Douglas Quaid strapped to a chair somewhere on Earth?
See, my favorite part was when he rips the guy's arms off.
That's a great part.
Yeah.
I like the part where that lady's got 3 breasts.
3 boobs. That's a good part too.
Hey, by the way, filmmakers, Paul Thomas Anderson, Jean-Luc Godard, take note. Get a 3-titted woman in your movie. People remember it, right? Like, try to remember anything from Magnolia, right? Nothing.
Nope.
Just blank slate.
Nothing. God, but I mean, if I think about 3 tits, I didn't even have to think about Total Recall again. It was already there.
No, exactly, because that's filmmaking, Charles.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm thinking about it now. Back in the day, I made a fake Criterion covered DVD cover for Total Recall, because that's what I did when I was in high school. Was I sat around by myself on Photoshop making fake Criterion covers for ridiculous movies. But that was one of them. It's the 3 tits.
That is legitimately the most humanizing story about you I've ever heard.
I still have them. I'll send it to him. I'll put them on the
I'm
site.
Sure
put them on the website.
We should, put them up on the web for the fans to snap up with their saliva dripping shitty jaws. I don't know. Just, I want to see them too.
Yeah. But we got through, the best, the worst. I think Screamers falls pretty much right in the middle.
Yeah, there's a very charming effort with Screamers where you sort of understand how it was pitched. You can sort of see how it could have been good. And then it's really just a mangled, limp movie. But there's ideas going on that I think could have been, in some alternate universe, dealt with some grace that clearly, completely did not make it to fruition. The script of Screamers is an absolute fucking chore, man.
Sort of.
Oh my God.
But there was some of my... I actually had to write down... Well, I only wrote down one, but I remember 2 lines. I wrote this down, and it's... I don't even remember what he was talking about anymore, but he says, "Do you have a piano tied to your butt?" That was just an amazing line. This was like back in the 90s when movies were so forcefully written a lot of the time, especially action movies. For some reason, that got to be that thing. I don't know if it was James Bond with his little throwaway lines and it just turned into the whole movie being like that, but do you have a piano tied to your butt, soldier?
Well, the whole movie, Peter Weller, who plays the main character, notable to the Philip K. Dick canon is that frequently his characters are the least interesting part of his books, and they're often quite faceless, and they tend to sort of spout his general philosophies about the world. So I understand it's the 90s, where this is an era where, from Point Break to John Woo to Die Hard, everyone is wisecracking and mean and quick, and, you're always trying to make these sort of craggy, undeniable leads. So you're given almost a blank slate of a character, and they try as fuck to punch him up into something that he's just not in the story. And as a result, the character is this sort of like generic, tough badass guy saying, yeah, shit like, is there a piano tied to your butt? That means nothing, and it's kind of amazing.
Dude, my favorite line, though, I didn't have to write this one down, was when he's sitting in the middle of the desert, or for some reason it got really cold. I don't really remember why, but he picks up a rock and it's a bug. Do you remember that?
I do.
And he just says, "If you're gonna be a rock, be a rock. Don't be a bug."
Well, my favorite line has to be from Jessica, who's actually, I don't think I even remembered her name after watching the movie, but the main female lead has probably the best line in the movie, which is, "We can smile, we can cry, we can bleed, we can fuck."
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's just, so you can tell this is going to be a real shit show from the beginning, because the movie opens with roughly 28 minutes of scrolling text providing exposition that, even having read it, I don't think would give you the plot of Screamers. So in the short story Second Variety, it's an extrapolation. It's sort of like a logical extension of the Cold War, where basically there's almost no humans left on Earth, and it's all automated robots fighting each other as sort of, proxies for the Soviet Union and America. It's a fairly delineable story. I have no idea why they chose to change it. I really don't understand why they got away from that. Because it's such it's an eminently explainable premise. In this movie, there's something about companies fighting governments, and it is just, none of it makes sense from the beginning.
No, and it's true. I love it. This is maybe 2. We'll give it 2 similarities between Screamers and Star Wars: The Force Awakens, is they both begin with scrolling text. But you're right. This went on for it was an essay. I've written shorter essays for school. I'm not even exaggerating. That thing was probably, I don't know, 2,000 words. It was just goes on and on and on. And as you said, it's just a totally unnecessary. It's just, I don't know, really understand why they made the changes. Maybe it was because it was about Russia, and maybe just the Cold War wasn't really doing much for people anymore. So they decided to change it to corporations. But, whew.
So you think maybe it was a desperate effort to maintain the post-Cold War delicate peace by not making Screamers too politically incendiary?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe just they got bored and decided to write something that would confuse everybody.
I mean, this is the kind of movie that pushes nations to war.
But it is also funny. I think the 90s just were a time where that sort of stuff was expected. I don't know if you noticed even here, but in a lot of movies, there's always that shot, an establishing shot, or whatever the actual term. Do you know the term? What's the term where you see the outside of something so you know where you are?
I believe it's an establishing shot.
So there's always an establishing shot. And in the 90s, for some reason, they're always like, moon base, 6:18 p.m. or the Panama Canal. It's just like, there was a strange, I don't know what it was. If we needed this, we really needed to know where everything was, but I don't know. They don't really do that anymore, and I'm all for it.
Well, this movie is largely a movie with very large sets. So I sort of understand them leaning on the establishing shot, because the movie is largely people, like soldiers in uniform, walking between places. That's like probably 2/3 of the movie, right?
Yeah.
So all they have
It's
to
like
lean
Lord of
on
the Rings.
is, it's like Lord of the Rings minus all that dumb bullshit with the little guys, and with the addition of stupid, not frightening, terribly digitally enhanced mechanoid things that launch people's necks.
The digitally enhanced, actually, before the scrolling text, I believe there is a pointless exploding asteroid. Am I remembering that correctly?
My memory was so wiped by the end of this tedious, exhausting, like hilarious but also brutal movie. I don't remember. That sounds like they'd add that kind of shit in.
I remember laughing out loud, like before the scrolling text, just like random exploding asteroids in space. It's just like, I thought it was going to set the tone, but it really didn't, because setting the tone would have been just, watching people walk around in space, maybe.
Well, let's get to some of the detail work on this movie. Essentially, I'm not even going to try to synopsize the plot. There is almost no plot to synopsize. Essentially, on this desolate mining planet, a soldier from one government is told that there's possibly a way to make peace with the corporation they're at war with, and the movie is loosely about him stumbling around between bases trying to figure out if that's actually happening. Spoiler, it's not. So, that's kind of the plot. It's fucking stupid. The best parts of the movie are as follows. They saddle the incredibly taciturn, mean Peter Weller main character with a character named Ace Jefferson.
Oh.
Who, I'm not sure what they were going for. Maybe like a likable, spunky sidekick, but basically the dumbest fuck in the galaxy is his sidekick. This guy's like, whoa, I'm the best shot in all of, my shooting group, but then proceeds to be fucking useless. And he's chirpy and tries to wisecrack and has this sort of like all-American dumb shit face, and he's just useless and stupid. And if anything, the sort of like comic austerity of Peter Weller is offset and looks even more sour next to this fucking moron running his mouth about nothing constantly.
Yeah, I didn't even know which of them we were supposed to like. Were we supposed to like this young guy who is funny? Or were we supposed to like the old guy who hated the young guy? It was very confusing.
Yeah, they were both pretty irritating in their own way. Another note about this movie that I really enjoyed is one of many plot ideas that goes nowhere. Well, for example, they tease at one point that maybe they're not on a planet that's not Earth after all, a plot which promptly goes nowhere. But they have to smoke cigarettes so that radiation doesn't kill them or something.
Yeah.
And this is sort of posed as a critical element of the world of Screamers, and kind of doesn't really go anywhere or mean anything other than that you have to chain smoke to stay alive on this shitty planet, which is kind of funny. But like, why? Yeah, it's a neat. It's like I can see how that'd be like a fun bit of color to have in there, but it's so strange and it just nothing happens with it.
Yeah, I think as a detail it would have been nice, but the level of attention they gave it, you're right. It was just like became way too center stage, and then you just sort of, I just always in the back of my mind. Weren't they red too, right?
They're red cigarettes, and they have to smoke them or else radiation will kill them.
Yeah, there was so many flaws too. Cigarettes thing was a little weird, and then the whole the way that did we explain the whole premise to people who might not want to see this? I just want to know what's going on.
Oh yeah, so essentially, there's self-replicating, murderous buzzsaw-equipped robots called, what they call them, swords in the movie?
Yeah, well, essentially, I'm just going to take over just to quickly get to that point, is that they're fighting a war. The way they won the war is by creating robots that attacked anything, and then they made it so that the robots would just build themselves without them having to intervene. So essentially, you just have robots making robots, learning from themselves. And what I was about to say was the way they don't kill I don't even know if they're good guys in this movie, but the way they don't kill the people who made them was what did they make? This thing that like sent out a anti-heartbeat? Is that right?
Oh, they're cool bracelets?
Yeah, they're cool bracelets.
They're cool light-up bracelets that are dumb as shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to explain the pseudoscience of screamers to anyone. No one deserves that. But long story short, you had to have a glowing bracelet that I guess shuts off sometimes for no
Right.
reason.
And then for some reason it only
You have to,
affects one person unless the people who wrote the movie needed it to affect more than one person.
Yeah, it's the kind of MacGuffin that is so insulting and so arbitrary. It really is dumb as fuck, this movie. Oh my God.
Why did they change it? Like we said earlier, why didn't they just keep it in the book? And the book is like, it's a thing that emits radiation that the robots don't, that they just avoid it. Why'd they have to come up with this crazy ass nonsense about heartbeats?
It's one of the rare movies that over extrapolates on a source text rather than under extrapolates, because they just throw this shit in and it is dumb. And that's all I got on that, Charles. You're right. Why introduce a more complicated plot device if the one provided is easily explained in a sentence and requires almost no update?
Yeah, and actually they did this, I think it's because this is a fucking, 15-page short story?
It's a short story. It is not
I
long.
read it in one sitting.
And it is a chilling read.
Oh, it's really good. And that's the whole thing. They added the whole thing where he goes to the other base, the Russian base, and in the story, he doesn't even get to the base. He has to stay in this little underground hovel, and then they all leave and go back to his base. In this, do you remember why they decided to go into the Screamer base or the whatever, the Russian base, the CPAP,
I believe so on his way to the peace treaty meeting, which is what's driving him to leave his base in the first place, he goes to a base of the corporation soldiers on the way there, where you meet the least original cast of characters, from the smoky, mysterious, powerful woman to the two guys who are on the same squad but fucking hate each other, one of whom is kind of a weird jock and the other is like a sweaty dork with glasses. And they all go to the Screamer base where they believe they're going to be attending this peace treaty between the corporation and the government. I think that's the plot.
But don't they know that it's been taken over by the Screamers?
Evidently not, Charles, because they go all the way down into it for a very long time, and then somehow equally long they go back up.
And doesn't she get naked like right off the bat?
Almost instantly, she's like taking a shower in the movie.
Yeah, and then he's just like, God damn, you're beautiful. That was really weird. I liked it though.
Yeah, you want the gruff voice of a Peter Weller complimenting your looks. I wanted to say this reminded me of a movie we've spoken about in the past, Hardware.
It did. It reminded me of that too.
If Hardware was fucking terrible, and hey, rest in peace Lemmy, who co-starred in Hardware.
Oh, I know.
I think he'll most be remembered for his role as hovercraft pilot in Hardware.
That's how I'm going to remember him, because I don't even really remember. It was Motorhead?
That's the one.
Got it. But yeah, I didn't listen to that.
Anyways, yeah, that's why they go deep into the Screamer base. I think it's to go to like a peace treaty that doesn't exist.
Right. But in the book, it made way more sense. He meets these people. They say, holy shit, our base got taken over by robots. Let's go back to your base. Here they had to fill time. So they're like, oh, even though these three people stranded at the entrance to the base, let's still make them go into the base taken over by robots.
Yeah, it's dumb, man. So, okay, we should point out as well, a major function of the plot that provides a lot of the horror is that the robots are getting smarter, and they're starting to create more elaborate, humanoid-like creations. So instead of just being weird kind of, what are those bad guys from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the little robots that would try to kill the turtles?
I didn't do that.
Whatever. They go from being like little scurrying metal things to like actual children begging for help and stuff. And
so that's why the story is called the second variety, because they find the first variety, they find the third variety, and then they spend most of the story trying to figure out what the second variety is. And it's really all about these people stuck together wanting to kill each other because they don't trust each other. And they try to do the same thing in the movie, but it didn't really work at all, especially because every single person becomes a robot, right? Don't we even see, like, everyone at the other base looks like is a robot at the end?
Yeah, they sort of throw away. The way I would describe this movie is slack. In one word, it is a slack movie. There's no effort to generate tension. Things just kind of happen. They try to build emotional stakes that go nowhere. So, like, for example, Peter Weller's buddy from his home base early in the film later becomes a robot. Why? Not really sure. Is it totally self-defeating that there's more than three varieties? Yes, that sort of just defeats the whole dramatic tension of the mystery of who's a robot. So it's just a shit movie in that regard. But it does
I
lead
did
to
like
my
that guy though.
Chuck.
Yeah, he was actually my favorite. I felt bad when he got it.
Well, he sort of acted like a human almost, which for this movie is a real coup because no one else talks like they're not in a shitty mid-90s action movie. By the way, the gun design in this movie was awesome, and the totally perplexing, almost total lack of actual action was frustrating.
Yeah, because that would have saved it, I think, or at least bumped it up a little bit. Was having some good action, and they almost delivered. That opening scene was pretty brutal. You saw some limbs get chopped off, lots of blood, hands flying, little things scurrying around, and then it was pretty much another hour of a man walking in the desert, and another man, and just like lots of people in the desert.
A lot of desert in this, I agree.
Cold desert too. I still don't really understand that.
Yeah, it's sort of snowy at times, then it's very sandy at times.
It was like they shot this somewhere and they didn't have any control over their set, and they just were like, fuck it. This scene will be cold and snowy. Or maybe they have like micro seasons there, like 2-day seasons.
Do you want to get into the unique biosphere of the world of Screamers? Because I will write that paper with you.
Yeah, I mean, they explained so much. It was weird that they left that part out. So I figure like they must have had something that just got cut.
I think the attitude of fuck it probably underscores most of the production of Screamers. I want to talk about the two big set pieces in the movie.
I don't remember either of them. So yeah, go for it.
Okay, one is just bad and the other is fucking hilarious. But the scene where the plane kind of drops out of the sky.
Yeah.
There's one scene where they clearly had we got this one piece of equipment, we're going to blow it the fuck up and drop it out of the sky, and it's kind of the one time we get to do it, and they just go for it and drop like the most set piece of an airplane out of the air. It's kind of funny, but mostly just depressing because it's so poorly rendered.
Yeah, that was pretty bad, but it reminds me, there was something I loved. One part that I loved was, remember how the guy, the sidekick guy, he goes back in against the fear of death to retrieve his Sony Discman?
Yes.
And then later it turns out it's not a Sony Discman, but it's the weirdest porn machine I have ever even seen in a movie.
Yeah, this is kind of up there with Demolition Man for one of the strangest segues into digital eroticism that I've ever seen.
It was like a shitty iTunes equalizer video mixed with tits.
Yeah, this is the character Ace, of course, you may recall from earlier laudation from this podcast, the shit-eating motherfucker Ace, who is like in the middle of this like weird nightmare mission. And again, he's framed as this sort of like crack soldier, which is just talk about shit that doesn't deliver. He's fucking useless. But like, yeah, he takes like a segue from like fighting off malicious throat-slitting alien robots to watch porn next to essentially his boss.
And a boy. And a small child.
And a crying child. Yeah.
And it's not even good porn. It's like watching when you're a kid, when you're like, get the static channel. It's like, why would you choose to...
It's scrambled.
Yeah,
it's very
it's
scrambling.
like really weird. It's like, I don't know. Maybe it was the closest thing to Philip K. Dick, or maybe it was the farthest. I'm not quite sure. But it was funny. I really liked it.
Well, falling in love with a machine certainly feels like it's in the realm, but you actually provided a very good segue here into my favorite part of the movie where, okay, so spoiler alert, spoiler fans, the crying child they pick up, well, there's a robot,
Boom.
Dummy. And when they go back to the first base in the movie, there is a scene that I can only describe as perfect in every way, where our intrepid heroes gun down wave after wave after wave of robot crying children with teddy bears in a sort of talk about, I imagine there's a version of this movie that's chilling and very well done and disturbing. But in this movie, the incredibly awkward digitally like doubled ranks of the same crying child, it just all looks like shit. And it is so funny to watch a bunch of soldiers pretending to be in grave danger mowing down the same sobbing child. It is a great fuck
I think
up.
it works in the book because without the visuals, they just didn't think it through. The visuals were very hard to do, especially back then. Like to make, first of all, we don't even know why they're dangerous. We don't even see what one of these little boys can do other than show a little teeth. But it's like, they're small. They seem to not have many powers. And then they're just mowing him down. It was good. I sort of enjoyed this movie for wrong reasons, but it was pretty fun in some ways.
No, it's a fun watch in that a lot of the time you're left shaking your head in complete confusion. But this is a movie with a $20 million budget, which is not nothing. It's not a huge amount of money by today's standards, but that's a lot of money. And it still looks like shit.
Yeah. And they didn't think, but that was the problem. They didn't think it looked like shit back then. They thought it looked good.
Well, I just feel like even, to bring it full circle, even a Starship Troopers looks shockingly better than you remember.
That wasn't made by a bunch of fucking idiots.
Like, that actually holds up. And that's 97, right?
97. No, it does hold up. Those aliens fucking creepy. That movie scared the shit out of me when I saw that.
It is a gory, frightening film with some very shocking violence in it. Look, we gotta bring our screamers to some kind of a close here, but it is a confusing, strange movie. It is very hard to tell what they're going for. The ending is absolutely abysmal.
I do want to talk about the ending actually, just for a brief moment, because that's the new trope of android with a heart of gold, but also a murderer, but also a pilot. What the fuck was that?
It's fucking terrible.
So the story ends with him killing what he believes is the second variety. It is a robot. It's one of his companions. It turns out to be the fifth variety or whatever, and then he realizes that the woman was the second variety. But she convinces him to not only show him where the rocket is, but give him the coordinates of the base and tell him the secret code to get there. She takes off, and then he figures out that she's a robot. And it ends with him being like, holy shit, I just killed every person in the moon base, but at least they know how to kill each other. Like, that's a great... The story ends so well.
Well, the last line is they'd already I'm going to brutally misquote this, but they'd already begun to develop weapons to destroy each other.
Yeah, it was like he was relieved by that. That was the only thing he was relieved by.
Yeah, so it's like the final legacy of humanity is creating a race of sentient robots who will just replicate war eternally.
Yeah, but the movie ends with him... Does he realize she's a robot yet, or does that come out then?
I think it comes out then with a woman, the sort of smoky...
Oh, that's right, because another one comes out. But it's
Yeah.
like she ends up fighting on his side.
We're led to believe that she develops a heart of a conscience.
Yeah, and fights herself where they both die, and then he escapes. What are we supposed to learn from that?
Yeah, and then they tag in a fucking stupid way some sense of threat by leaving a teddy bear from one of the crying children in the back of the escape craft. But by that point, it is such a flat line of a movie, it's hard to give a shit.
Oh, God. The danger that lies in a stuffed bear. One bear. But one thing I loved about the book that I also thought the movie totally fucked up was that the book, they're on a completely destroyed Earth, and he's trying to get to the moon as like some last hope. Here they're on this shitty planet, but they always have the option to go back to this beautiful Earth. And I think Philip Dick is like, I just love that moment where he can make us realize that the best hope they have is to abandon the world that we love and know and try to make it on the moon. Like, that's all he has left. Or the book is just the guy gets away with it, he survives, and he gets to go back to Earth. Jesus, how sappy. It's fucking awful.
It's a dumb movie. Again, what makes Philip K. Dick's work eternal is that he's perpetually pulling the camera back, reminding us that our place in the world and our place in reality is incredibly tenuous, and we can lose everything, and there may emerge new realities that are totally foreign to us, but just as legitimate. And that's what's so powerful about his work. And this movie has none of that. It is not edifying in any way. It spirals out almost immediately. I would say watch it if you want to sort of, be very snarky about a failure. And I think you were right. Peter Weller's dialogue does kind of make this movie delightful in its own way. He just says some amazing shit in it, and that's
one thing I did like is that it did, which we can segue into Star Wars with this. Well, it's beautiful. I know it's not maybe up to your standard, but this movie does the same thing that 100 other sci-fi movies does, where it, like, for some reason, we have to believe that they can go to other planets and they have all this new weapons and new technology, but for some reason, communication technology never advances. There is always static. There is always cutting off. Visual people are always breaking up. What the fuck? How can they create fast and light technology but still not have good AV equipment?
Well, they got the hologram,
Yeah,
right?
but it breaks up. Remember, he has to grab the remote? What was that even about? He's like, give me the remote.
That was fucking dumb. You know what the most astonishing thing? Did you notice who wrote the movie?
No.
Well, baby, you're about to grow up because this is very depressing. Dan O'Bannon wrote that movie.
Who's that?
Of a little movie called Alien. The man who wrote Total Recall, Alien, and Dark Star, which is the early John Carpenter film, wrote that movie.
Damn.
So ostensibly one of my favorite screenwriters ever also churned out this piece of
Just
shit.
produced a turd. Jeez.
Really. And again, part of me believes there's a universe where a Cronenberg or anyone directs this movie and makes it a really chilling production. Because again, I can't recommend enough, no matter how much of a failure this movie was, Second Friday by Philip K. Dick is an excellent short story that could, produce an amazing movie someday. This is not
That's
that.
the thing is we don't even, there is the twist, which we already gave away, but it doesn't even matter. That's why Philip Dick stories are so good, is that you don't need to, the whole thing about him trying to figure out who the second variety is, it's really unimportant, especially if you've read it a couple of times. It's really just, you can watch it unfold. Even knowing that, you can still just see the things that he's trying to get across.
And speaking of a cross, in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren has a sword that's a cross.
Dude, I forgot about that.
Right?
That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Did you notice what I did there?
I didn't. What'd you do?
Oh, well, I very smoothly transitioned from Screamers into Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
That was, that's right. I thought I already did that, though, because I didn't get to finish. You interrupted me. That's right. Star Wars: The Force Awakens is the first science fiction movie where AV technology works perfectly.
And thank God, because if it hadn't worked, if they did not have a very complex system of, audiovisual communication, I would have been straight out of it.
And then the big guy, first I thought it was a giant.
The big guy. Can we do a little better than the big guy?
Maybe that's why they do it shitty, so that we can recognize it. Because I thought it was a giant for maybe a few seconds, and then I was like, oh, that's the Emperor.
We're talking about the shadowy leader of the bad guys in the new Star Wars. His name, you ask? It's Snoke.
Snoke. Weird.
Yes.
But he's
Snoke.
perfect. He looks like a perfect CGI thing, which is exactly what I would imagine a hologram, video conference would look like. So A+ Star Wars. I give you an A+.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Right now you're praising Star Wars because you believe that the main villain, a sort of massive goblin-like twisted creature in a black robe on a huge throne, is what you think the future of teleconferencing will be like.
Well, yeah.
That's our opening to
A+.
this movie.
I couldn't have done it better.
All right.
He looked. I thought he was a giant, and now anyone going to the movie will like, oh, that's not a giant, because we learned first on The Real Deal with Josh and Charles that it's actually just a video conferencing system. But maybe even knowing that, you'll still think that he's a giant for like a second.
Well, I think some people in reviewing that movie get caught up in, how do you advance a well-established narrative? What were the action sequences like? Are the new characters compelling? How do you breathe new life into a seemingly exhausted franchise? But I like the angle we've chosen, which is, how business meetings will take place in a distant past.
You're not really in the business world, right? Or are you?
I mean, I'm technically speaking, I work in an office.
Okay. Well, I guess we can give it to you. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trust my boss if he looked like shit on a video conferencing system. I'd probably quit.
So if Snoke was your boss, you would have a great confidence in him, much like Hux and Rilo Ken.
Yeah.
Ken Rilo? Kylo Ren.
I don't know. Their names are funny. But yeah, no, I would follow that dude. He obviously spent the time to get the right man in the building, figure that shit out, and set it up for him. He didn't do it himself. He didn't try to cut costs, get some, set it up and do some shitty thing that he cobbled together through pieces he bought on Newegg and Amazon. He paid a man or a group of men and women.
Hey, paid a man or a woman.
I said it after. I knew you were good. He paid, and maybe is an alien creature now because it's alien lands.
Like a genderless alien creature.
So he paid a creature of unknown origin to set up that room so it could perfectly get his message to the people. I loved it.
It's like, meeting someone with like a custom stereo set. You know what I mean? He didn't buy some shit at Best Buy. He had the guy come in, look at the acoustics of the space, effortlessly meld the technology into the existing architecture and create a very immersive like experience with a stereo system that you can't really get just some shit you bought online.
Right. Well, maybe that's why I really felt for that, because I spent some time, I spent some money, and I did that too in my home.
Yeah.
So I liked that guy. And it wasn't a Gollum?
Andy Serkis portrayed Snoke.
Is that his whole career, is just playing Muppet creatures that aren't Muppets anymore? Would he have been a Muppet?
He's just some twisted little fuck in a green screen room, and they just tell him what to do, and he writhes around and snarls.
He probably is like just a little dog man creature that they just have on a collar at all times, and all right, green screen time, and he just clambers and eats a fish and just does stuff, and they film it, and then he just gets green screened.
So just to clarify, you believe him to be sort of chained up in the Hollywood basement and dragged out, nary even to see the light of day.
Yeah,
just straight into the studio.
Joyous to be going. Otherwise, I don't really know how to explain why he would be doing this over and over again, other than just forced servitude.
Can I guess why he might be doing it?
Yes.
I don't want to sound cynical, but I bet he gets paid.
No. That dude, he's naked in a basement, only wearing a collar, waiting for the sun.
Right.
And then they strap him up in his little green gimp suit costume, and they let him run around and lick people. And then they're like, all right, let's go film the scenes, Andy. And then he films the scene, and he goes back in his hole, and then he's ready for Terminator 4. Or they've already made Terminator 4.
They've made 5 Terminators.
Do you think he'd be a good Terminator?
Excuse me?
Well, he'd be a good Terminator, right? Just strap him into the little...
I think he would be a great Terminator. I want to see the conversation with his agent where he's like, hey, Jeff, I was thinking for the next movie, maybe it's just me, and I'm not playing some sort of twisted, horrible monster that frightens children. And his agent just laughs and says, shut the fuck up, Andy. Get back in your goddamn cage. Get back in your goddamn cage.
I don't think he's in a cage. I just think he's in a locked basement. That would be cruel.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, I appreciate that. Maybe like a sort of a slimy walled castle dungeon. And they sort of throw a bucket full of raw meat down.
Well, he does good work.
Yeah, this is, here's to you, Andy Serkis. You're always freaking us out somehow, you crazy son of a bitch.
I don't even know where we went. But, yeah, he's, it's...
Rest of the movie?
Pretty good.
I loved it. I saw it twice. I thought it was fucking
pretty
great.
Good. I'd say it was, you know me. I got into Star Wars because I played a Star Wars card game when I was a kid. I don't like...
Wait, so you actually played that card game?
I love that card game. It is one of the best games I've ever played, and I play a lot of games because I play games, and this game is fun. I paid way too much money, which maybe is why I like it, and I just try to, avoid the guilt and just think I liked it. But it is very complicated. Took us a very long time to learn how to play, and then we learned how, and it's really fun.
Well, I'm very impressed. I collected the cards as a kid because I liked the idea of collecting the cards, but could not for the life of me figure out the rules of the game.
It was, once you played it a few times, it does get better. But yeah, my brother and I, we sat around, we tried to figure out, we followed they had a fake game going on where we were doing the rules. We're like, and this is an example thing that could happen. And we kept just following along, and then we would just be like, I don't know what to do on our own. But yeah, that game was good. So I knew all the characters because I'd choose my deck and make my deck with all the little creatures from the band and all the things in Mos Eisley. Every frame of that movie was turned into a card. So I knew those movies in and out, not because I like the movies, because I don't like the movies really. I like that game. So this movie was great because it essentially is a remake of A New Hope that's not sort of simple and boring and dumb.
Well, to respond to that, in a way it was simple and dumb, just like in a really charming way.
Well, I'll just disagree because we haven't really done much this episode, but I think that having the main character be a coward, and because Han Solo is great, he was the fucking best part of the movie, but the new characters, rather than having a Luke Skywalker, whatever her name was, Rain, or what was her name? Rey. She was a more interesting Luke
Was it
Skywalker.
just me, or you couldn't understand what the fuck she was saying when she introduced herself?
But I think
I had no idea what she said.
her story, rather than having like they both had abandoned parents, but I think her like longing to be reconnected with them was much better done than Luke. Luke was just sort of annoying. And then the guy, I forget his name too. What was his name?
Finn,
yeah, FN numbers. I thought his cowardice was wonderful, like propelled him through the whole movie. And I was like a really interesting character to see take on the helm of a Star Wars movie. Because Han Solo is pretty cowardly too, but he always, gets involved. And the same thing happened to Finn. So it's true. It's very similar. And I just thought it was, I just thought it was more fun. It's slightly more complicated. Oh yeah, and the Darth Vader character was fucking awesome.
Kylo Ren.
I loved it because Darth Vader is bad. He's just pure evil that becomes good by the end of the trilogy. And here we have a dude who is trying so hard to be bad. It's like he has to go in to his little conference room and be like, I gotta be bad today. And I thought it was great. It was like this little goofy emo guy.
Yeah. No, they definitely essentially took what I think of the movie as sort of like a newer Hoper. They totally went back to the first page of the script from A New Hope and really fine-tuned it and modernized it and made it fluid and a lot more human in a way that made it more emotionally resonant immediately, which I was very impressed with. I will say my only criticisms of the movie are that a lot happens in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Like, an almost unbelievable amount of shit happens. And I frankly thought some of the pacing was so aggressive that, as is the case in a lot of J.J. Abrams' production, there's some concern as to, like, okay, we meet all the characters, they convene, they just fall apart, an entire solar system is destroyed, there's a massive base, they go, like, things happen at a certain, click that I almost thought was too harried. But I mean, who am I to complain? I got swept away in it. I loved it. It's just, I guess, if you could say the early movies are a little slow for being real here, A New Hope is not a pulse-pounding film until the very end. This was, at times, almost comically stuffed full of, like, shit happening.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it moved everything. He is very either good or bad, depending on what you're looking at. But the Star Trek movies do the same thing, where just a million things happen in 2 hours. And it's a good way. We were talking about Screamers, where pretty much nothing happened for an hour and a half. I would totally watch overstuffed 2 hours than a meager hour and a half coming from a shitty action movie or like a pretty typical action movie. At least there's a lot to watch and have fun with.
Yeah, I'm going to nitpick the things that I didn't like very specifically because, I want to make it very clear that A Force Awakens was probably the most fun I've had in the movies in a very long time. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I saw it with friends. I saw it with family. Everyone had a good time. There's some editing in the movie I didn't like. Remember when the scene where Rey is loading up her little land speeder thing on Jakku, a.k.a. not Tatooine, technically?
Yeah.
There's like a series of jump cuts while she's like loading up her little speeder thing that was like not Star Wars. That did not feel Star Wars.
That's a good point. That's Godard. JJ, that's Godard.
Yeah, buddy. You leave the French shit to the French, okay? So that was took me out of it for a minute. I thought the shot of Lisa, Princess Lisa, when Princess Lisa is like hugging Han, there's like a weird blurry shot of her face, and it was blurry both times I saw the movie. And that was weird.
I remember that. You know what? The biggest letdown for me was the guy from The Raid, and The Raid 2 was in this movie, and he didn't do anything. And that just sucked.
He didn't raid at all.
He didn't fucking kick anything, and it was really disappointing. But I hopefully there's a director's cut where that dude fucking kicks a bunch of shit.
I'm pretty sure there's like a 20-minute scene in the director's cut where that guy just throat kicks everybody on Death Planet Starkiller. Yeah. This movie had a conversational ease to it that some people complained about, but I really enjoyed. Because if you think about it, it's that very relaxed banter from the original movies that make them so charming. And I think they found a way to not totally Joss Whedon it into sort of... And I'm not saying that it comes out sounding kind of negative towards Joss, but, some of his stuff falls into this sort of banter that, like any very prolific screenwriter. I'm talking about you, Aaron Sorkin. You can sort of fall into this sort of patois that gets very predictable. But this movie, I think, managed to steer clear of that very
No, the
ably.
Avengers movies is some of the shittiest dialogue action movie stuff that I've seen in a while. So no, this was nice, especially having Harrison Ford. He was so good. He just like perfectly bridged the old series with this new one and let us, meet these new characters, but always have the safety blanket of being like, oh, there's Han Solo. Let's let him make us laugh, because he was great. He was still as charming as ever, and he was perfect.
Yeah, that's delightful. He was great. I mean, if you didn't have that tingle in your dingle when he steps onto the Millennium Falcon with Chewie, you're dead to the world.
I did.
You got a little tingle down there?
Yeah. Well, I think we're talking about the same thing, but I did, if we're talking about that.
I'm talking about my taint.
No, I was thinking of something else, but it's close. We both had the tingle when he showed up and when he left.
Yeah, I think we're both tingling men.
Yeah, but it was good. The special effects were good, and it didn't have anything to do.
Oh, the explosions! Oh my God, the explosions were so good.
And watching a space battle was fun again. Man, the best part of this movie was that it had nothing to do with George Lucas and his shit head.
Man, well, in preparation for this podcast, actually, I went back and rewatched snippets from Revenge of the Sith, the third prequel that I, for some reason, remembered being not as terrible as the other ones. But even rewatching that, and let me say this, I saw Phantom Menace in 3D. Why? I can't entirely tell you. Well, I can. I was stoned and I wanted to see the pod racing scene, and that was awesome. But everything else about it was like, it's a trek to get through that movie.
And that's what I think George Lucas is a really bad filmmaker, because he's a fucking idiot, which is fine, but he puts like fart jokes into a movie which he then expects us to take incredibly seriously. I'm talking more about the more recent ones rather than the original three, but just like, Jesus, I don't remember. I haven't seen that movie since it came out, but Revenge of the Sith, if I recall, was like broodingly serious in a lot of ways.
Well, no, they are leaden movies. They are joyless, airless movies. And Revenge of the Sith, again, you see underneath a lot of impossibly ugly digital effects. I'm talking effects from 10 years ago that have aged so poorly that it's really astonishing. You go back and you watch any number, let's bring up Starship Troopers. That movie relies on a mixture of practical and digital effects and is stunningly contemporary looking, something like, 18 years after its release. You know? But Revenge of the Sith, again, this is the third one. He's had a minute. You just see people wandering around green screens. That's really what it looks like. And it is very hard to get excited. And you see these very, jaw-dropping space battle scenes that are legitimately pretty cool. But it's all so busy, and all the colors are so strangely saturated, and all the dialogue is just, those are failed movies in every way. And, The Force Awakens really manages to capture the vibrant spirit of the original films. They're scrappy, there's epic moments and intimate moments, the interplay between characters is believable, and the emotional stakes are very well expressed. And I don't know, I don't want to, it's dull to talk about a movie that's exciting in pedantic terms, but fucking Force Awakens.
That's why we try to watch bad movies, at least we have something to talk about.
Yeah, it's hard to get frothy about a movie where you're like, this is great. It's great.
We haven't talked about Llewyn Davis was in it.
Oh yeah, Inside Llewyn Davis was in it, and
he was awesome.
He was fucking. I like him a lot. I think Oscar Isaacs.
And I like that they decided to introduce him, have him be really cool, be like, oh, this guy, maybe he's our new Han Solo replacement, and then he just leaves for most of the movie. Comes back every once in a while, but it's like, I like that way that we are introduced to a large cast of characters, and all of them are treated very well. They all have fun. I mean, a couple are probably more important than others, but it was a true, it was a greeting. We got to know all these different people, and it's hard it's hard to dislike any of them, even the bad guy. Like, that guy he was great. He was such an interesting bad person that I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I want to see why he wants to be bad so bad.
Yeah, and that's why this is the perfect foundational reboot to a trilogy. They kicked the door wide open. It's got a lot of range, and I think they're going to take it some very interesting places. Much like where I plan on taking my next date in what they call Little Saigon here in New York.
Yeah, and it was just refreshing after experiencing 4 terrible Star Wars movies, 1 okay Star Wars movie, and 1 very good Star Wars movie. It's nice to be back to something that's fun, exciting, sort of interesting, pretty good in the emotional resonance factor. It's just like, it wasn't a heap of shit, which is great.
Yeah, I think that sigh of relief when you see a highly anticipated film and it doesn't suck is such a delicious feeling that I'm happy to savor it in the years to come. And I'm looking forward to when we get to sit down in a year and a half from now and talk about Rian Johnson's effort with Star Wars Episode 8.
Oh, wow. It's so weird.
I know, right?
8. We've been stuck with those.
I kept calling this one 8, but I was like, nope, you're bad at math, Josh, and you can't read.
You're bad at Roman numerals.
Yeah, which is ironic because I have a terrible tattoo with Roman numerals on it.
I thought you were Roman.
I am not. I'm Jewish.
I know that, but aren't there Roman Jews?
Charles, once again, it's been a stellar episode of The Real Deal with me, Josh, and you, Charles. I'm looking forward to more of our travels and travails through the world of cinema next week.
Yeah, where we don't have any fucking idea what we're going to be watching, but we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back, fans. You get that popcorn ready and maybe a cold Coca-Cola.